Oh, okay. Oh, no, my gosh, my eyes are horrible. Oops. Yeah, I would love that. Okay. Okay, yeah, yeah. Because there's a couple of really cool people I'm trying to get from out of town. Took the Apple University to the pool of artists coming. It's interesting because the three African-American poets that are
Hi.
hard to
Whoa,
get
okay.
really well, like,
When it's on, right?
when they were too expensive for us.
Yeah, sorry.
Can you hear me now? Is that good? Okay. Welcome to 100,000 Poets for Change. At this moment, all around the world, poets, musicians, dancers, visual artists, crazy people who love art and sustainable living, care about the environment and social justice and humanitarianism and equity are gathering to celebrate those things and hopes of a more peaceful world. So I'm so grateful that you're here to share with us. Each of these little red stars, as you can imagine, represents an event happening today around the world. So it's a lot of us. Apparently we have some inroads to make in Russia, China, and the Nordic regions, but other than that, we're pretty much around the world. So it's a great thing to celebrate. I don't have the sign-up sheet, so if you signed up first, come on up. Yeah, thank you. I walked up without it. If you signed up first, come on up, present. You can introduce yourself briefly, and if you would just look at the list and announce the next person when you're finished, we'll just keep it moving. That was the illustrious Nancy White, Professor of English and Director of the Writers Project, SUNY Adirondack. So the first person we have up is Lee Gooden. You ready?
Thank you for having me. This is a little experimental piece we're going to try here. We're debuting it. It's called We All Belong in a Leapfrog, a poem for multiple voices. I'm not a rocket man. My name is not Major Tom. I'm only taking a small step for this man, not giant leapfrogs for mankind. My towers are trumped.
Oh, come on. Give us a break. Leave your political axes at home. Listen to the organ grind and dance, you monkey, dance!
I have no intention to climb up in the spires, up into the flies. I'm asking what my country can do for me.
I said shut up and dance!
Okay, because I've already done too much for my country. I'm not one for the stars, not a space cadet counting down.
10.
No head in the clouds.
9.
No brain in the stratosphere.
8.
Not looking for the brawniest brain ending in A-N-E.
7.
Those doormen pointing the way to upper dimensions.
6. 5.
Me, my feet are grounded.
4.
Dreams are dunces in the corner.
3.
And there are way too many
2.
broken dreamers. 1. Give me the mire of reality.
10.
I want visions of Icarus.
9.
Don't want visions of
7.
Icarus.
6.
Give me the rhythms of tedium. Give me
6.
seagulls
4.
feasting in the parking lots,
3.
amid dirty
5.
diapers and ripped plastic bags,
3.
waiting among American beauties. Give me
9.
cows mooning,
2.
Walmart sheeple blatting calls of murderous
2.
crows during self-checkout.
9.
I don't want
3.
fancy mandalas,
8.
chip cards, or just a 40-hour
7.
work week. No, not
6.
me.
4.
Not me. Everyone.
10.
9, 8,
8,
7, 6, 5,
4. 3.
2.
1.
Blast
Blast
off!
Houston.
You?
Not me.
We have a problem.
We all belong in a leapfrog.
We all belong in a leapfrog.
We We all belong in a leapfrog. Bipolarity. Tripolarity. Self-induced schizophrenia is our new coping skill.
We have a problem.
Diatribe.
Dialectic.
Dynamic.
Dianetics dynamite.
Our blood green.
Our money red.
Our walls orange.
Hiking to indecision.
Treading the cesspools.
A half-assed dead man's float.
We're unwinding the constellations.
Turning wishes to dust found on the roller balls of antidepressants and residue found inside antidepressant pill bottles. We excrete the red, fall for it, and expect it. We anticipate more,
Red.
more,
Red.
more.
Red.
Red.
Red Rover.
Red
Red
Rover,
Rover. Let logic cross over.
Welcome to 20th Century American Mythology 101.
Let logic cross over.
Once upon a time, during the colder days, safe spaces were found at playgrounds and ball fields.
Let reality cross over.
A snowflake was precipitation with an identity crisis.
Let tolerance cross over.
Google or googly meant crazy eyes.
Let maturity cross over.
We were the greatest country on earth.
Still are.
Amen.
This is nuts.
No crooked politicians.
Get off the stage, you suck.
No one homeless. No one starving. No racism.
What country were you living in?
No one wants to hear your bullshit.
He's entitled to speak his opinion.
Nope, sirree, Bob. Not in this country. People just knew the place back then. It was acceptable. We were God-fearing folk.
Go back to Walton Mountain, you Johnny boy.
There was no need for this liberal rabble-rousing. Oh, and ducking and covering under desks kept you safe from dying from nuclear war.
Duck and cover.
How's that for a safe space?
Under a desk.
This concludes 20th Century American Mythology 101.
Class dismissed. We said, let project cross over.
Times change, technology changes, ideologies change. Human nature? Not so much. We're a cliche wrapped in a cliche, mummified with more cliches, while hanging from our vestigial tail on our family tree, feeding gravity and excrement in our red. Evolutionary ladder be damned. From sea to shining sea, teeming with plastic molecules, to one ear to the other, necks congested, we're full, we're loaded with primordial soup and oyster crackers. So damn full of ourselves.
Where's the context?
Context.
Stop generalizing.
No hope at all. CNN, Fox News, and Mad Magazine
Fake news.
forecast gloom, doom, and despair.
What, me, boy?
Alfred E. Newman should be worried. No hope.
Obi-Wan, you're my only hope.
You are
You're
part of the
problem.
Yes, I am part of the problem, spouting rhetoric like a broken bidet at a brothel. I'm an ocean dead zone, suffocating you with my lack of oxygen and misinformation. I'm blinding you with ambient internet glow, keeping you from reaching for the stars with my lack of vision. I'm shutting down your brains, brining your gray matter with crime scene tape.
Take a deep breath and open your eyes and open your minds.
I affect you, you affect me, and I affect her and him, and they affect us, and we are all together.
Goo-goo-goo.
Let's play. Let's swing on the swings. Let our kicks kick the clouds and flip over the bar to find our imaginations and solve our problems together. We are one for the stars. We are space cadets. Yes, us. We are counting down, and the countdown begins. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition.
Mr. Sulu, a headboard factor one.
Make it so.
We all belong in a leapfrog. We all belong in a leapfrog.
Where?
We all belong in a leapfrog.
Everybody. We all belong in a leapfrog. Come on.
We all belong in a
leapfrog. We all belong in a leapfrog. Thank you.
Okay, we have Lucy Prosco, Carol Grazer, Pat Leonard, Nancy White. I forgot to sign the sheet. Neil Herr forgot to sign the sheet. Anybody else forget to? Micah and Stu. Okay, so I'm going to sneak this to the back, and if you guys could sign in while I'm photographing, that would be awesome. Please give a wonderful round of applause to Lucy Prosco.
to read The Layers of a Dream, which is a poem about my immigrant identity. In a dream, a strange family welcomes me to this land where I am a mere visitor, a pebble in a deep stream of history. They call me their daughter-in-law, and I give thanks, stretch my hands to earn my worthiness, to be beloved of pines and forest spirits, a granddaughter of a different vision, my ancestors dragging their trunks filled with linen shirts and sunlit wishes, through Ellis Island and into Detroit, where they work for many years, blending into the patchwork of poverty, spilling Polish folk songs into narrow windows. I am tacked into their dream, a blanket of stars punctuated by blue silence. How would I know I would be walking on this lake shore, still harboring water lilies, their yellow eyes guiding dragonflies and loons? Here I am, sitting on this rock, tracing its circular patterns with my fingertips. A history of fissures, scars, through which granite spills into slate, rifts, and semicircles, where the earth contemplates its fate over and over again. When the history turns darker, I recall my grandmother's struggles, her passage through deep hells of war, her plea for another kind of journey. I let the fears subside, thinking of other beginnings, always beginnings. And I think of my students, the record of their young struggles, their grandparents' wishes for them, made plain in this hour. When threatened by hate, they bow over books. They greet each other with kindness. Can they stop violence at its core when they speak of fairness and love, when they comfort one another? And then I just wanted to read a couple of very short poems from this project I've been working on at the beginning of this year, which was, it's called Postcard Poems. So I've been exchanging poems with another poet from Washington State, Nellie Bridge, and they're kind of very short and sparse, so slightly different than what I usually do. So this is January 14, Mirrors. The lake, still as a mirror, awaits our confessions, our half-visions of truth. We're half-grown moons moving above the horizon into the brightest of nights. I hear our footsteps on the ice and their echoes into the deepest forest. We visit friends, embrace those nearest us, celebrate daily bread, and the red flash of cardinal's wings. Anything can happen now. Listen, I hear your songs in my throat. I will sing so you may hear yourself. This is the last poem, January 8, A Bird's Nest. My dog and I stumble upon a tiny nest in the middle of a frozen lake, possibly knocked down from a tall leaning pine or expelled from its shelter of gray reeds or carried by wind from afar. For it was empty and it needed a new beginning. Now it is a tiny snow packet, slowly drifting on the moonlit ice.
Yeah, you're gonna end up.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm going to give a plug for my next event, which is Cafe Lena Poetry Open Mic on Wednesday, October 4th. Jay Rogoff and April Bernard are going to be the featured poets. If you can make it, it's free for students. So my first poem is just called Winter 2017. After the long snow melt, the ground froze, and we walked over the brown grass like cement, unforgiving. And the moon rose like a full radiant pearl that melted nothing. We sat all in our separate chairs and told our disparate stories. The wind repeated herself, cold and cold and cold and cold. We blinked against frosted cheeks. Some of us knew the story that would call a softer wind. They were still cradling its newness. They were still nursing its hunger. What could we do but wait? Let our breath warm our frigid fingers. And this is, I loved Lee's poem. That was really exciting to hear all the voices. He's got his voices up here still. No, it's. So this next poem is about the Women's March on Washington, which I felt really called to. It was one of my first, as a very young woman, my first protest was to go down to an all-women's event, and it was like in 1980 or so, and we circled the Pentagon. It was all women. It was women from all over the country. There weren't tons of us, but we were there to, take down the patriarchy. And I feel like Trump is like the perfect personification of the toxicity of white patriarchy. And so this march in Washington really called to me. So this is my poem about that. Women march on Washington all over the world. We are still in the streets, a glut of protest. We are still stopping the subways, blocking all traffic. We are still in the streets. We've never stopped marching. Our arms still uplifted, our signs piercing the sky with words we will live by. We are still in the streets. Our anger is exponentially expanding, a deep ocean current pressing us forward. Our vigilance is unceasing, a many-eyed creature. We are asleep and we are watching. We are still in the streets. A guttural roar, a tidal wave rushing, a foaming wall growing, erupted from the clap of fear. We are moving across landscapes, a determined respect gathering countless shapes and shades and constructs of love. We are still in the streets. We are a sonic boom of voices. Our words have flown past the atmosphere, collided with the pulsing stars that have changed us. We have changed the shapes of the stars. We mirror the mutinous constellations of peace. We are still in the streets. We are an acceleration of evolution of culture. We are rattling the rusted bars of cages. We are shaking loose the profit from jails, shaking loose the profit from war, shaking loose the profit from the 1%. We are sewing those dollars into inviolate blankets we place over the shoulders of anyone who is cold. We are still in the streets. We are banging the windows. We are shaking the ground. We are vibrating the air. We are pouring out and washing over. We are that force of love and water. We are submerging what is not laced with compassion. We are still in the streets. We are still shouting. You can hear us in the pulse of your blood pumping forward. We are still in the streets of our homes and our jobs and our fields and our alleys and our schools and our woods and our skyscrapers and our mountains. We are plotting and stopping and marching for peace. We are still in the streets.
Thank you. We are doing great. You guys are awesome. Next we have Pat Leonard.
Hi, I'm awestruck by the poems I've heard. I just have a very short offering called Requiem in Greenland. And it was inspired by an article in the New Yorker, August 24th, 2016, called A Song of Ice, written by Elizabeth Colbert. Requiem in Greenland. Winds rending their flowing garments, keen like ancient shrouded women at an Irish wake. A death knell tolls, a dirge sung by melting ice. On pure white glaciers, meltwater streams into supraglacial bright blue rivers with bands of clear ice riddled with cracks. They plunge into vertical ice shafts, undermining, collapsing, singing a song of ice, ice that should be silent. Thank you.
why. Nancy's going to help me read this piece. This is called Earth Calling. I keep thinking of all the earthquakes and tsunamis and hurricanes and disasters, and I think we're getting a phone call from somebody. You turn the blaring down to answer when the phone starts ringing.
Not ringing like tapped crystal. Not like your ears after a rock concert. Not like your grandmother's big black phone with the cord that tied itself in knots. Not like that, but
Like a smoke alarm, crackling that whips into waves all the water in your body, and it rings in your body like somebody's just died. You know who it is.
there's no mistaking that sweet chirp, followed always by thunder, that makes you feel at once ravenous and nauseous, like you know what you did.
Stop it, she says. And you were struck by her tone. Not all angry principal, not all raging warmonger. Just melancholy grandma.
Stupid words speak themselves.
Stop what? There's a pause then, like trying to step over a sinkhole. Where do I begin? She sighs. Stop and think, she says. You know me, she says. You've forgotten you know me, she says.
And as her heat rises, floors shake.
She says, I just can't get through to you, I swear.
Wind whips your hair.
I've tried, but you fill your mouth with sugar, your veins with smack, your ears with anything that'll burst your drums, so you can say you just can't hear me. Hear me, she says, and it is over. That's it.
Some conversation, right? Like you get to the end of the latest mystery by your forgotten fave author and the last 3 pages go missing?
You hang up.
Of course, because why clutch a conversation that's clearly over?
But the thing is, she's an earworm now. The tune you can't get out of your head. Sound that grabs the ends of thoughts and twists. Grandma's old phone cord turned noose. Oh, you try to forget. Try to fill your ears with music, to dance it off, drink it off, vacuum it up, spill ink all over it, to blot it out again.
But nothing works. It's hard to talk about, really, but
When you sleep, she calls again. And this time you want to hear. You've missed her voice.
the real one. Warm depths you want to swim naked in.
And she shows you things in your dreams. Shows you a horse's dark eye that, even looking sideways, sees your secrets and loves you, even as you dig your spurs into her side.
Right before she bucks you off.
And she keeps talking without words, but you know what she means.
Usual grandma stuff, you suppose.
Stop throwing away everything I give you. I have feelings too. And if you're as smart as I know you are, then why do you wake sleeping children to teach them that you know answers you really don't? Why do you elect men who think birds tweet to disguise distraction? Why do you trample on the feet of refugees? Why do you close your pockets? Why do you close your ears and eyes? Why are you spitting in my soup and building on my shores when you know my hips are getting stiff and
You try to breathe.
I can shake the children off them whenever I see fit? Why have you forgotten all we've talked about? Why do you insist I don't exist when I brush your cheek every morning before you wake? Will you please acknowledge that when you poison a mother, her breasts will make milk of it. Milk her children will drink because the water rising on the floor can't quench their thirst. Why do you pretend I'm angry mean?
She is.
When you know there's as much fire in your belly as there is magma in mine.
You burn.
Do you think I'm happy to step on the scale? To know a runner in my stocking can send California crashing to the sea?
Denial's only one of her rivers, you know.
And then, in your fevered dream, she tells you a story. A pop art guitar strumming at the campfire, kind of can't get enough story, where she makes cameo appearances in disguise to watch her characters act out their own sordid tales.
Because she can't quite bring herself to quit us.
In this dream, she shifts shapes many times. Sometimes she's an ordinary redhead.
One you've never really known, though you start to remember that she was in your childhood yard.
And there she is again, sunlit, spread open across the horizon as her chicks scuttle away from the engulfing shadow of her wings.
That was fun. It's fun to be somebody's doppelganger. So I'm one of those people who goes, oh, I can't write political poems. And then you sort of start looking and you realize, oh yeah, I wrote one. So, this is a book that kind of took over for a little while. I wrote a persona poem about Jesus for an anthology, and then I turned it in too late. And then I realized, wow, there's a lot of good characters in this book. So they all started telling me their stories, which the Bible had completely wrong. And while I was listening to them, I learned that God, in fact, had gotten insomnia, or not insomnia, I do this all the time, amnesia, in the 20th century and kind of wigged out on us for most of it. I think World War I and II just kind of knocked him off into outer space for a while. And he comes back with amnesia, probably insomnia too, and gradually remembers. You know, oh, yeah, but it takes a while. Eventually, he's back on the job in heaven, and he is kind of baffled by what we've begun doing in that century and this. So he's with St. Peter, and they're processing all the souls as they come in, and there's a lot more than he remembers having to deal with before. So he's getting kind of tired, so maybe that's why he's so testy here. Maybe it's the person in question. With St. Peter at the gate. Not her. And no more tonight. I read that headline from my curb. Housewife bombs clinic. But while she barged downtown, the babysitter was feeling up her daughter in the den. Her son fingering back issues of Jugs his dad keeps hidden in the shed. I saw her dump the stray cat across town when the kids were at school. Did I tell you that? Her husband, nightly singed by her disgust, though his love is 87% clean, about as good as it gets. Let her cool those size 6 heels. Can't we just lose her number? No, wait. Say she writes bitch 100 trillion times. Or, this'll get her. Free love. Make her write that again and again. God is a mean old teacher. But you wonder, like, wow, and that's probably someone who's done what her pastor told her every day all her life, right? But missed the spirit entirely. So, people go to war, I've heard rumors. I actually remember being in algebra class when the Vietnam War was declared over. I don't know if it was really over when they said it was over, but I remember being very, very excited and then terribly frustrated by algebra immediately afterwards. That's the closest that I've, felt, because the media covered war then much more accurately, vividly, in a kind of immediate detail than they were allowed to do in subsequent, shall we call them, eras. So there's a lot of war in the Old Testament, of people against people, and God against man, and man against nature, and nature against everybody, and everybody against everyone else. And this poem is a character who was raised as kind of a heroine, but when she tells her story, she's like, no, I didn't do anything. So I don't know if you know the story of Yael, and I won't go into a long biblical discourse because I would embarrass myself by getting a lot wrong. But she's given credit for stopping this terrible general who's fleeing a battle, and the other army parties catch up. But this is her saying, no, what really happened. Yael, my cheek against a flank, the she-herd waiting as patiently as goats can wait. I felt her milk drop, the musky scent, better than flowers. But here came Sisera, weary and stubborn, already planning his return through the pass, another battle, and after him, another army, led by Deborah the Mad and Barak the Simple. I gave him milk and let him rest in my bed. A stupid man, but he was my neighbor once. Twice he fixed my loom. He heard their iron wheels, or maybe felt the tremor of the ground, rushed out and tripped, flew headlong onto the tent peg, and there was dead. Barak rode up, and Deb, all crazy-eyed at his side, began to rant, Yael, our savior, brave Yael has slain him as he slept. My goats all ran off, bleating at the din. It took a week to track and tether them together, and bring them home. 3 I lost. 2 miscarried. That made 9. So I'm hoping we'll have 9 goats left at the end of this presidency.
Nancy, who's next? I'm sorry.
Sorry, yes. Micah Scoville. And Stu then Neil.
If everybody would be so kind that is able, you could scooch up closer because we have an acoustic guitarist here who doesn't want the mic. So if you could scoot up, you can move. We'll take a moment for that.
Can we still sign up?
Yeah, I should have brought the mic with it.
It's up there. Do you want the
You're not
stand
in the
mic?
back row, you're not gonna be able to hear me. You guys should come up here, back row. You'll love it.
Micah, do you want the stand mic?
What was that?
Do you want the stand mic?
No.
Okay.
Next time I'll bring the application. I apologize. just kind of, I do like an introduction, and I kind of weave around them a little bit. So, you know, I quote them, that's for sure. But the rest of the composition is mine. So, kind of thing. So, it's not theme and variations. It's almost a theme and variation, but not quite. Bottega.
Okay, well, the solution to world peace, I believe, is all we need is a certain percentage of the population to recognize sentience in all beings, human and otherwise. I just don't know what that percentage is, and I don't know whether, I don't know. This is called Green Bottle. All my poems are true stories that I've made up. The green bottle I began to dislodge, then stopped, seeing an ant colony inside. So left them to their toil, wondering if they see the glass design as just a random object from the sky, and considered how right they'd be, unmoved by reckless divinities who might prowl earth and sky, and, like curious, meddlesome children, marvel at the strange uses we make of their wreckage, their genius. On the porch roof after a snowstorm. I scan the town where wisps of smoke from chimneys here and there vanish. The rumble of plow trucks has yet to reach the stillness. As I begin to shovel, I recall the ancient Chinese believed poets were divine beings sentenced to toil on earth for some trespass in heaven. The snow cascades off the roof, not showers made by a passing comet, but by my labor. Something draws me to look up. The wind has erased the clouds, stars return. I feel a twinge of homesickness. Home is thousands of light years away, and the only way to escape this happy doom is to fall. Huh? Two more poems on me. Anybody here from Corinth? Corinth is amazing because it has a 24-hour laundromat. Why would a little town like this have... So I was a little envious. So this is called Midnight at the 24-Hour Laundromat in Corinth, New York. As though below zero meant beneath the sea, steam has fogged the windows, so it's like we're underwater in a submarine pulsing through winter. Is there a skipper on board, an invisible insomniac captain, or me, alone in this luminous room with People magazine and the Watchtower? Without, the Adirondacks loom. Sonar of forces immense around the sub. The engines of the dryers cruise on while the washer's portal song the ocean's madness. The sub is on chart through the frozen mountains and beyond to the infinite sea of stars. The final one I'll read, Kathy asked me to read this. I kind of think of the Russian poets in the 1930s, Anna Akhmatova, Maria Testeva, Pasternak, Boris Pasternak. They were all writing anti-Stalin poems, but in code, sort of. And so they wouldn't get sent to a gulag in Siberia, you know. But what was interesting is that I think it made the poems better, in a way, more subtle, more interesting. So maybe this is a little coded. It's so hard to write a direct political poem, in part because all poems are political, maybe. So this is called Fable. When we first moved near the marsh, a neighbor told me that in the swamp lived a white stag no hunters could kill. They stalked decades, yet the stag kept elusive, maybe too quick. The marsh a trackless maze, maybe he kept to bogs no one could roam. Hunters kept searching long after the stag became ghost, if you believe in ghosts. As if they never existed, those hunters are gone and dead. The swamp undrained, still impenetrable. And on a day when snow is melting, a heavy mist rises there, so you think, so thick, you think anything might appear. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. After Miko, lower your expectations. I love it. I love it. All kinds of poets, musical poets, word poets, just people. My change I'm celebrating is a personal change. And I look over things, and I'm just so lucky. You don't have to sign me up. I didn't want kids. I had kids. I didn't want them to grow up. They grew up. They did great. It was easy. Now, they've gone on. They've left me. And that's great. I'm so lucky. And yet we poets find the sadness and joy. And how funny being mad is. So here's my empty nest poem. Losing my kids. Far away candles in far away rooms, far away cupcakes and colored balloons, each of us wishing for something way over the moon. Far away candles blow out too soon. Far away mountain, a bride and a groom, round and around an old-fashioned ballroom, shimmering, glimmering, memories forever new. All of the happy time, all of the sad All of the happy times, all of the sad. What were we wishing for we never had? If I could only return, I would learn this sad tune. Far away candles slow down. Quick, make a wish and they're out. Far away candles blow out. Too soon. I'm not singing 2 weeks, I'll do 20 show tunes like that.
Thanks, Neil. We have a couple of open mic presenters, and I think honestly we only have time for one. So if you were interested in reading and didn't get to this time, please stop and give me your name and your email, and I'd love to put you on for next time. Just running out of time here. So Terry Wilhelm is ready, and I'm going to call her up. After, I'll jump up again real quickly after she's done and tell you what the order of the day is. Thank you, Terry.
Oh, gosh. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm not the best at speaking in the microphone. I'm always a little scared. I spent a lot of time on stage, but always with a bass guitar in my hand and hiding behind my long way from the microphone. I had a long piece to read, but I really don't want to bore you guys. So, I was asked recently to write something about coming out for National Coming Out Day. Will be week from Wednesday, I believe. So I wrote this little thing. They asked me what the joy is of coming out and what it means to me. And I told the person, I said that coming out for a transgender woman isn't all moonbeams and jelly beans. It's a little bit different for us than it is for LGBT people. So here it is. One might believe coming out is freeing, a metaphorical exhale, a relaxed notion of true acceptance of one's nakedness. And it is for so many. However, for me, it is a little bit, but not so much. I refer to it often as a gift that keeps on giving, like the notion of infinity. It may be so close, yet beyond reach. I don't wish to seem negative, yet I don't wish to seem positive either. Still, on the other hand, it has given me much to take away. And as a more, I'm sorry, I messed up, I'm sorry. Coming out has afforded me many affirming and rewarding opportunities. Still, on the other hand, it has taken away much more than ever afforded. Living truthfully has had its price, and transgender people pay for it dearly, with the loss of family, friends, occupation, housing, health services, and even the notion of being taken seriously. On a sliding scale of social gains, we are traveling downward on a triple black diamond trail with a broken limb and no way to return to the summit. Rather than believing the act of coming out is freeing, I contend the context for understanding those hidden meanings of so many tells, behaviors, demeanors, and strangely unfamiliar, atypical situations from the earliest childhood memories throughout life are the most freeing. It is quite simple to that final chapter in Agatha Christie novel, which I would once sift through the preceding text for the totality of clues, leading to that final discovery. I now realize that I was born to be female. I was assigned the wrong anatomy, and that this is quite common and carries no burden for shame. That it was the ignorance and is the ignorance of our times, our culture, and common society, which had this little girl pretend to be a boy and go through puberty as such, and I should live content now, whole, free, and loved. Let me put it
much, but don't go. There's more. We have time for buying and surveying purveyors of wonderful literature and music over there, so check out the table. Outside the doors, we have snacks. Who's against that? We have restrooms just on this side of the hall. And please come back at 4 o'clock. We're going to have the illustrious Paul A. Pines and the wonderful folk singer-songwriter Dan Berggren at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
No, especially when you feel a need, like you said, you look at the hymnal and you really want a song, a hymn on something that's not there. So and it's just a matter of shaping the kind of writing you do for a sermon, shaping that into singable. And you do what Woody does. You start with an existing tune. Take an old traditional hymn and put new words to it.
Yeah.
that describes my winter.
The ice should be silent.
Yes. The ice should be silent. I thumbed through the scraps of paper and notes I'd taken all through the rest of the year, and I said, oh, I remember when that thought came to me, and then that's what I work on today. Ideas on
Wonderful,
Well done,
thank you,
Gabby.
good job. Thank you. Can you stay for Paul? Oh, good, good.
Okay, yeah, it's all good.
Would you mind telling Bubby, we've got to switch the order. Paul's low on energy.
He wants to do it immediately.
If Paul could go first, that would be great.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
You can break it. So it's activated. March is starting to
I use my phone as a recorder a lot. Sing an idea, or a phrase, or play a... And every songwriter works differently. For me, the melody and the phrase come together. That the rhythm of the language suggests a particular melody. But that doesn't mean each time you approach a new song, you can't use a new approach and take an old tune or have a tune in your head.
Well, all my writing thing is, when our daughter was to be a senior in college, she's getting a degree in dance and international studies, and said, what am I gonna do for one day to dance?
But they're in worship.
And about a week later, writing a paper every teach. I don't think I want to do that.
That's the easy part, right?
I can see it. How you doing?
I don't know how close you are to Loudonville, but you're hereby invited to the Eden Cafe on Loudonville. It's the same exhibit at the airport.
Oh, this is a scene.
Super May thing.
Yeah, so you're coming up here, I'm going down there.
With other churches or just
Well, it's some churches. Hardly anybody from Saratoga, but don't you get people sort of occasionally from Vermont?
There's some people come from Ithaca. I mean, they're all over the place.
It's a wonderful thing.
Well, they might come too. There's some ones that they come to.
I get this feeling that the UUs in Saratoga think it's, we're already up here. I don't know.
It's no big deal for you to go to.
I guess.
Lake George.
It's weird.
It's what it is.
Yeah, it is, exactly. That
Song circles.
connection to the UUA and others.
When you said that in Salisbury, I know Paul and Carol very well.
Maybe.
But that's common.
I was excited to come and see.
Okay,
Yeah. Well, I don't know. When we were in Fredonia, somebody went to everything. Somebody went to everything. Sort of.
I've never heard the classical guitar here before.
Yeah, that was interesting.
They're always with
And now Dan, so we're like, musicians are elbowing our way in.
Yeah, isn't it nice?
She does the Cafe Luna.
I'm going to say hi to Paul.
strip mall.
Just to answer questions and work together. It's not easy. Places like Seago get hard funding.
So do you ever regret that you didn't, you know,
That's not together.
and Hollywood, you know, he was in LA, he could have gotten HBO on the ground floor. He would have been the third person they ever had, you know. No, I really hate LA, I don't. But anyway, so. The series of design, writing, and so forth would still be the same. I don't know what he eventually decided.
Yes, I think, yes.
It was a much like that. It was like we did a summer service to Wicked.
So I'm pretty happy just messing around with this.
We did a poetry service that was this summer too, and I did, but it was like famous poets. And music and poetry. Right.
Well,
It's connected in.
and boy, you know, Kurt did a little bit of video work for WordWorks. Oh, can we hire him? Oh, can we just have a conference? Wait.
Energy.
It's not what he does. No, this looks good. We need something. So, yeah, well, because our covers. Recommend artists.
Get them to a big meetup. Was he going to
Right. Never sad to or never find myself.
meeting with poets, you know.
Of course not. It's my music and trash.
I think it's trying to push me in the limelight, so, yeah, it's just nice.
Okay.
Nancy, thank you. Thank you.
You couldn't have played the You're like some kind of
And was it a young group?
And I love your work. How do you say
Spelled Y-A-E-O or J-A?
Okay, I read
Some people say J-A-L, but, so I spell it. I don't know. Yeah. One reason I did was to try to explain the original story. Whoever understands, explain the original story, so she's the background. I'm like, there are different versions. So, yeah, but yeah, kids. But I put them all in together, so I don't really know. Yeah. It's one of those, this army fought that army, and, you know, and then right in the crack between the history is a brief human story and a summary of it.
And always growing and changing. I hope they make it here.
time are you planning on? I'm sorry? What time is school starting? What time are you planning on calling quits?
Paul's gonna go now, so we've got maybe another, somewhere between a half an hour and an hour.
Okay, that's all
And we'll
right.
be done.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
I'm the cook, you know.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Can you hear me? There we go. It takes a moment to make its mind up. Thank you for sticking around. If I could convince you to move forward a bit, that would be really awesome. And then if we have any stragglers, there's room for them to settle in the back. So let me encourage you to saunter on up in the first 4 rows or so while I introduce our special guest, Paul Pines. Bob and I moved up here in 1995, and I've known Paul that whole time, and some of you, I'm sure, have known him longer than that. He grew up in Brooklyn. He's been here many years. He was a special adjunct in the English division for many years. He's still a practicing psychotherapist in Glens Falls. He was a merchant marine, a Vietnam veteran, had a famous jazz club in the city called the Tin Palace. He has 2 novels, Tin Angel and Redemption, a wonderful memoir called My Brother's Madness, another memoir that's coming out soon. Is it Traveling With or For? It's Trolling With. Trolling With the Fisher King is on its way out. Another book of essays is making the rounds and searching for its publisher. He's planning on his selected poems, and he just published his 13th book of wonderful various poems. I mean, each book is different and rich. This one is called Gathering Sparks, because wherever he goes, whatever his subject, Paul is always gathering sparks. He's widely published. He has books, CDs, journals, grants. I won't read the list. He had a wonderful show at the Wood Theater just a week ago, an oratorio composed by the local, scored by Catherine Reed, with a number of live musicians and 8 singers, and it was phenomenal. There were also 60 visual artists who composed works based on the 6 poems that were selected for the oratorio. It was truly, it should have been on PBS. It was something to see. I don't want to take too much time because it's much better time spent just listening to the man. Please welcome Paul Pines.
So I hope I haven't over-prepared. Can you hear me? Am I clear?
Yes.
So what I plan to do, Neil, you can hear me?
I just can't see you.
Well, you can shift.
Oh.
So, Neil, I enjoyed your piece enormously, having an empty nest of my own. What I plan to do is to intersperse selections from my Trolling with the Fisher King, which is the memoir that's coming out, with poems. And just let me say a couple of words about the memoir. Trolling with the Fisher King is a figure out of mythology, Parsifal. He's the wounded Grail keeper. He was wounded because he killed another knight in defense of a woman and took his blood and was wounded in return. And he violated the oath to the Grail. And so remained wounded most of his adult life until one came around who knew the right words to cure him. So he's a figure, he represents really the woundedness I feel the woundedness in the species. And I became intrigued with that concept, that idea, that we really are a wounded species. And to say that is not to say anything new or unusual, because all we have to do is look around. And what's inside of us is outside of us. And we are divided within. We're divided conscious and unconscious. We're at war with ourselves. So we very much maintain this legacy. And really, my feeling has been that as a culture, we have tried to disguise this and move away from it. We've done everything to move away from the wound. We've done everything to shield ourselves from the confrontations that are necessary to enlarge our awareness. And as such, we are now privy to what we find facing us with alternate realities and alternate facts and many of the things that are being reintroduced into the body politic. That and the replay of the Vietnam PBS, which brought me back. That era was really an era when we felt our wound. That was the era when the wound was acutely exposed. And we saw it every night on TV, we looked at it, we responded to it. And it was an opportunity in some way to become conscious of this. And one of the symptoms at that time was the propaganda, official propaganda, that lied to us every night about body counts, about winning the war, about why we should stay in, why we should lose hundreds and thousands of more lives, because some gray-haired men in positions of power felt that we could not lose the war. Okay. So all of this has been rekindled for me, and I've written about it somewhat in my memoir. I'll begin with a poem from Message from the Messenger. Andrew Wyeth enters heaven. 2. Let there be light, not for the sake of light itself, earth and stone as light catches, dissolving flesh, melting landscapes, oxidizing in blood. But for those light has ceased to touch. The sun adrift in a fever dream, a battlefield seen through a gray window by a bald man with yellow eyes. Let there be light, not for the sake of light itself, the created world as light catcher. Let light call forth the dead as stones in our orchards, breakers along our shores, as waves breaking against our nakedness on a summer day, as what commands light because it wounds us with its brilliance. Round 0. At the age of 6, I fished in Prospect Park for crappies. Then as a teen for blues on party boats out of Sheepshead Bay, and later in the Bahamas for marlin. At 23, I went to sea. My abrupt departure from an NYU master's program in English the year before had left me confused. I felt trapped in the classroom. When I learned that the roles had opened for applicants at the Seafarers International due to the escalation of the Vietnam War, I joined a dozen applicants in the Union Hall, cleaning toilets, sweeping floors, and emptying ashtrays for a few weeks until the U.S. Coast Guard issued my Z card, so called for the letter that preceded my license number, Z119285333D1. I was licensed to work at entry-level deck, mess, and engine. I boarded my first ship, the SS Wakasta, in Port Newark. When I walked up the gangway on a gray October morning in 1964, duffel on my shoulder, The seaman on watch called out, "Turn around now while you still have a chance." I spent that summer in the Gulf on deck plates hot enough to fry an egg under the midday sun. Shuttling between Beaumont, Houston, Mobile, and New Orleans, I threw a line off the stern freighted with the baker's impenetrable bread, which sank as soon as it hit the water. It was time out of mind. That winter on the North Atlantic voyage, in a Bremerhaven bar, a prostitute took out another woman's eye with her high heel. In front of Peter Paul Rubens' Descent from the Cross in Antwerp's Cathedral of Our Lady, St. John's red robe as he bared the weight of the wounded Christ buckled my knees. It seemed to me that everywhere I went, I sailed in the very wake of woundedness. In August 1965, I boarded the Esparta, a United Fruit refrigerator ship in Alameda. The Latino crew had looped casually between Golfito and Belize City with cargoes of bananas and were now headed for the South China Sea. Once in Vietnam, the military kept us in country as a floating refrigerator for nearly half a year. The wounds I brought back with me would fester in others as PTSD and Agent Orange. I disembarked in Seattle to find a world I no longer recognized. The advice I heard on the gangway in Port Newark rang differently to me now. Turn around while you still have a chance. Divine Madness. Citizen Tom Paine, from a line of corset makers, apprenticed to corset makers, appears out of nowhere to change our hearts. His tongue erupting with volcanic dreams seeds our revolution, after which we deny his age of reason, call him blasphemous. Not even Jefferson would receive him. Alone in his farm in New Rochelle, he designed suspension bridges, the first of their kind, never to be built. Dies despised, refused consecrated ground. His final resting place, unknown. We never know what to do with one who appears from nowhere to change our hearts, but send him into exile on a raft of snakes or into the night sky, one who appears from nowhere to guide us through that wilderness in which we meet ourselves in search of ourselves, in search of one born from the rubble of our assumptions, tongue erupting with volcanic dreams, to write his name in lava plumes. Sharper than a bayonet, his nails at the flesh of our politics. Last call at the Tin Palace. Pax Romana. No, it's Pax Americana. Our version of Pax Romana. A room of hungry ghosts in Congress. I hear them again as I did in Southeast Asia on a banana boat stuffed with refrigerated turkeys for Thanksgiving mess sold on the black market as dawn poked rosy fingers into the eyes of Marines on the landing at Da Nang. Poor Southern boys raised on grits, Alabama ice cream, waving worthless script at tea-girls, like Mimi, whose closet leaked of Marlboros, canned peaches, ivory soap, who saved me when men in black surrounded our bed, told them I was the lifeline, brought her what she tithed them. Hoped they let her live after Saigon fell. On all those girls in Long Au dyes, cupboards full of mixed-race kids, unwanted currency of another kind, rotten lettuce in our wake as we snaked through the Delta, bumboats appearing, appropriating putrid bales we pitched over the side like politicians selling war against civilians in the streets of Baghdad. Forgotten lessons of Way, Agent Orange, flowing back into our water table. Rhetoric praising the most remarkable fighting force in the mindless hearts of patriots flying flags from their cars, porches, baseball caps. This Pax Americana takes me back to Leloy, where orphans change dollars for piastres, counting money so fast soldiers can't figure out why they come up short. Bills unfolding at warp speed under their noses, walk away shaking their heads but can't help coming back to watch orphans make fools of them all over again. As a merchant seaman, I crossed the Pacific with a Swallow, who hitched a ride from the Golden Gate in San Francisco to Subic Bay in the Philippines on our United Fruit reefer, the Esparta. Even through the strongest storms, when I thought such a creature could not have survived the gale, had to have been blown away, there it was the next morning, perched on a boom. That Swallow became my companion on the journey, a soulmate. Long after I returned from the South China Sea, the seabird haunts me. My golondrina exists as an ache in the present, an unhealed wound. I follow. From reflections in a smoking mirror, configurations of conquest. They knew he was coming with his pale skin, black beard and robe, this Quetzalcoatl banished long ago, knew he would return and why. That he was irresistible and would arrive according to prophecy by water from the east. They knew he hadn't come to devour hearts, blood-sprinkled food of Tezcatlipoca, on whose lake called Smoking Mirrors they built their cities. This one was not so easily satisfied. The signs were undeniable. Northern lights, volcanic eruptions that made the lake around them boil, a comet, an earthquake. Moctezuma's nerves, a quivering garden of snakes. His sister, Pampatzin, returned with visions of ruin after 4 days of death-like sleep. Never was so much knowledge of so little use as to proclaim a God where there was none, to allow 500 men to seize an empire of millions. Impossible to understand unless we measure it by what we know today about conquest and ourselves. That we covet the Milky Way, as if it were Xochimilco, a floating garden, and beyond that, deep devouring lake, as if we too would build on a great smoking mirror. If he had killed Cortez, left him rotting in the bush, Moctezuma feared the wind would stop and leave the world baking in the sun with nothing to cool it. But what of us? We know better. Cortez was not the wind. Restaurant Villa Hermosa. Huevos rancheros, tortillas de harina, refritos de Nescafé. The waitress shouts my order through a hole in the wall of a restaurant outside San Fernando to a man in front of an open fire. The way flames leap around him, I know he is cooking my breakfast over the heart of Mexico. La Dueña, a beauty gone to seed, sits by the register in a blue dress, features flickering with the memory of loveliness as she pins back her hair. She knows that feelings become extinct when we cease to use them. How we change as creatures once they are gone. For several years after returning from Vietnam to the bewildering streets of New York's Lower East Side, I spent every morning at Nick's Diner on the corner of 2nd Avenue and 4th Street, recording dreams. The images I brought back nightly from sleep, embedded in dramas that pointed to meanings I could almost but not quite understand, were irresistible and relentless. The Greek proprietor in his lightly stained white apron and half-smoked cigarette, with pale blue eyes picking out of thick, black-rimmed glasses, was guardian at the gate. At Nick's, I could sink into my dream world and feel safe. I would later think of the diner as a temple, like one of those dedicated to the Greek god of healing Asclepius. As early as the 4th century BC, pilgrims came to spend the night at one of those secret chambers, incubating dreams or visions for a priest to interpret and then prescribe the appropriate therapy. At Nick's, my own Asclepion, I followed what I'd given birth to the night before, a procession of images to their destination as the smell of coffee, home fries, and bacon wafted from the grill. Now and then, I'd find the diner closed and knew that the proprietor had gone to the track. Otherwise, I could depend on the white-haired man leaning on the counter to nod as I entered. There was seldom more than 5 or 6 customers, mostly on the stools, perhaps 1 or 2 at the tables. But my table, a 2-seater at the window, with a view of Cafe La Mama across the street. One of the regulars at the counter, a man who made random duck noises, bothered no one. In minutes, Nick set my toasted bran muffin and mug of coffee down next to my open notebook. He did it soundlessly, then returned to his post. I ate slowly, seated next to the one evidence of nature in the room, a drooping potted snake plant, and began to write what I recalled. When I began this exploration, I felt lucky to remember 1 or 2 dream fragments. Slowly, my ability grew stronger, and I retained whole dreams and the dream sequences until I found myself spending as much as 3 hours every morning at the task, more time than I thought possible. Once the dreams were recorded, I over them, like a man on a glass-bottomed boat above a coral reef. The colors danced just below a transparent surface, shape shifting slightly depending on the current. All kinds of aquatic life showed up to feed. I let out my lines and watched, never felt rush. Nick appeared to understand that I was fishing for something important in much the same way he handicapped the daily racing for. We did it together, with a minimal exchange of word, but a growing sense that we were similarly compelled. It went on like this for 3 years, until a stand of bleachers seats at Aqueduct fell on Nick. The diner disappeared almost immediately as in a dream, and became a bodega. Spectral lines. I dream symmetries, moving from seen to unseen, the invisible patterns that sustain falling leaves, the currents in stone, water and air, sacred geometries pooling in the dark cave I prepare for in the calculus of autumn. Redness remembered. Cardinals in the backyard bring their redness to bare limbs in a time of war when we are bombing Ur, from which Abraham rose with his household gods and left the flaming ziggurats, temple whores, that terrible lust for death and renewal. Their redness after a long winter in the north, we can hear their song before sunrise. Whistling fills our ears, while elsewhere missiles explode over the Tigris, where bearded King Ashurbanipal II, from a chariot in stone relief, kills lions with his bow. Bald Sumerian statues, mouths and eyes forming perfect zeros, wail to their gods, IPGs exploding, vectors of chaos to ring in the new year as the old one bleeds, and Lilith loosens and keens by the vanished Ishtar gate, the sacrifice required at the birth of a new order. Gilgamesh astride spectral battlements, we move artillery and troops into the garden of first things, where Inanna wept at the loss of her tree rooted in the Euphrates, inhabited by a serpent and a bird so bright it appeared to be on fire, like the valley in last night's dreams. Brilliance of falling leaves. A spark of that fire now on a bare limb in my backyard. What redness do cardinals bring this year? What redness do they bring? Fire sermon. Eddie calls from Ottawa to say he has just seen the first red leaf just north of Hull. I hang up and think about autumn in the Adirondacks, Lookout Mountain on fire, the world in flames, Saigon, New Year, 1966, bamboo roofs exploding, Baghdad, March 2003. We live in a burning house, fire inside of us, fire outside of us. My wife and children, burning embers, I reach out to them, trapped in this blaze, cry silently at night, wake to the smell of smoke, eat ashes for breakfast, signaling through the flame. A couple of more from Crowley, a couple more poems. Crossing from San Francisco to Vietnam by way of the Philippines in late August 1965, the first week out held the kinds of wonders one glimpses when the waters are calm and the sky responds with amplitudes of light at all hours dancing on its surface. Sea spouts rose between mothering ocean and covering air, sunlit ladders for angels at midday, shadow columns at dusk supporting a diaphanous Parthenon. Seabirds spreading our wake, flying fish leaping where our bows sliced the water. Suddenly in the middle of the Pacific, the mood changed. Wind-driven clouds drawing strength from the water became black vectors, magnitudes of size and velocities of disorienting force. Thunder and lightning of Olympian proportions set up a fierce exchange. The order came down from the bosun to batten down the hatches. We spent the next 2 weeks sealed inside steel bulkheads. The storm that raged around us was Shakespearean, the kind that battered ships and scattered sailors to unknown islands. The situation had the most startling effect on me, one I couldn't explain. Only to observe that it drew me more powerful than all the day's sights and moods that preceded it since we weighed anchor in Alameda and passed under the Golden Gate. Every day, at the height of the turbulence, as the SS Sparta plunged and rolled, I made my way to the end of the shaft alley at the bottom of the engine room, past spinning cylinders that drove our twin screws. Where the alley narrowed and the polished shafts disappeared into the world outside, a narrow metal ladder bolted into the bulkhead extended straight up to the main deck. I climbed it, rung by rung, from my engine room station 5 stories below to a small hatch at the top. It was the only unsecured one on the ship. I raised it, braced its weight against my shoulder, and peeked out to gauge the strength and direction of the wind. When I judged it safe, raised it all the way and climbed out. The hatch opened onto the fantail beyond the paint locker, which afforded me minimal protection and a modicum of secrecy. Hidden from prying eyes, I held onto the rails until I lurched to the stern, where I grasped the railing around the fantail for dear life. Twice a day for 10 or 15 minutes, I watched as skyscraper swells lifted our twin-screw refrigerator ship like a bathtub toy. It rose so high on the swell, I could see the top of mountain ranges, Appalachians, Ozarks, Adirondacks, shapes carved in stone for an immutable instant before we dropped. The descent was as steep as it was sudden. At the bottom, nothing existed but the trough and the black, white-veined liquid marble wall that loomed like a canyon overhead. Those who spend time at sea, out of sight of land, can tell you there's a quality in which time and space, inner and outer, dissolve. and that the experience extends beyond becoming conscious of a particular moment to becoming consciousness itself. On the ship's fantail, I apprehended the world through the observing eye that links the individual psyche to the world soul. Rose Marine, a love poem. Dark palms blow against a blackening sky. Sea grapes rustle in the shadows. Waves blown back are dappled gray manes where light hides under the gull's wing. Flashes briefly in flinty moonbeams as they strike the beach, setting breakers on fire, licking spaces in the rock wall in search of salt air, a healing breath, the heart in its bat wing lair. I walk the beach, your name unspoken on my lips, to whom I must speak. You, my dear, who fill me over the distance with all the years we've lain together, consciousness becoming conscious of itself. Thank you for this, the story of our lives. Walking the Dog, from Gathering Sparks. Late summer. Last day of August, low humidity, cool shade, warm sun, currents at dusk. I navigate the block with Harry off leash. Florence on her porch, who once told me she moved to Glens Falls at 83 to be near her daughter, calls my shepherd a handsome boy. Guesses his weight at 122 pounds. Recalls her late Dobie, another heavyweight. What a gentle boy. Then discloses her first son learned to walk, holding on to that big dog's balls. She is relieved to have shared this intimacy. And I, even more, to walk on, nudging Harry, who sniffs at everything, half blind but otherwise alert, hears my urgent request to pick up the pace. A teenage girl with purple hair pedals past, smiles when I catch her eye, and is gone, leaving behind a purple afterglow. Steadier than usual, rounding the last corner on neuropathic feet, for once no wobble in my gait, I can't imagine being happier than I am now at this moment in sight of home. Back straight, one foot in front of the other, as if holding on to a big Doberman's testicles. 2 February. Tempranillo Veritas. High on Spanish wine on a chill night past suburban porches, careful to avoid invisible patches of black ice, wearing the wrong shoes, smooth soles. I am not such a goat-like man at 74, walking my aging shepherd, Harry, my wife, still beautiful, home in bed. Stars above, snowflakes about to fall, thinking myself to have been the best good, bad boy, the best bad, good boy possible. To steal a slice of the fruitcake from the freezer, heated for 5 seconds, in the nuclear warmth of a new age of which I am a part. A living piece of graffiti, such as haunts the walls of Rome. Kilroy was here, adopted as my own, some of my parts. Then whole, making it all the way around the block without a fall. Conclude with certainty. Heisenberg's uncertainty, delta pro delta, equals Eckhart's declaration. I see God through the same eye he sees me. 3 bare limbs, this is early April, just greening. Taxonomy starkly visible, implicate echo of leaves. Porches at night, harboring shadows. We walk. My old shepherd Harry behind me, half deaf, eyes cloudy, led by his nose, stops to sniff roots and dirt, surfaces rich in history, so complete he can taste it on his tongue. Voices from backyards, open windows, gather and dissolve under a street lamp. I wonder at the interface of music and numbers. Pi chasing infinity, Debussy folding the golden ratio into La Mer. Intervals we create unheard. Harry shambling beside me through the night. I tell him it doesn't matter stars above us have died long ago and lie buried in light years. Illusion experienced as fact, often more profound than fact as experience. Everything I see cries out, I am. Last sequence. Configuring the net, a conversation with the catch. There's this, one of my chapters I explore the idea of our fragility in many areas. One is the area of discoveries in quantum physics. And there's this figure in the early history of quantum physics named Wolfgang Pauli. And Wolfgang Pauli was really an outrider among all of them. Such an outrider. He developed the Pauli principle, and he in fact questioned all of his own discoveries till it came to a point where the behaviors of things as they were imaged no longer described the behaviors that he saw. And so he forced the whole field to abandon, for instance, the solar imagery of the atom, just to describe the way atoms worked. And so all of these wonderful scientists had to abandon imagery for mathematics, because mathematics was the only thing that would describe the action. And a great pall and depression fell over all of them. Mostly Wolfgang. He kind of divided himself. He became a double identity. At night he roamed the bars, he picked fights, he was whores, and in the afternoon he went and he lectured. And he was really falling apart. At one point he met Jung, and he read Jung. And he began a Jungian therapy, not with Jung himself, with somebody Jung specified, and began to work with his own dreams. And through that process, he began to heal. He began to find imagery that would describe things that he could not describe before. He ultimately came out with his vision of the world clock. If any of you ever want to Google an image, which is mind-boggling, go on Google it. Google Pauli's world clock. Well, anyway, in this section of my troll, I pile on my exploration or my analysis of the talking fish fairy tales, which I do early enough. Pull up a fish out of water and it tells you. It's magical. It'll give you a secret. In my reverie, I'm sitting in the crew mess. I feel the rush of channel fever. I itch for solid ground, but can't see the beach except as a distant shore. I consider raiding the night lunch or heating a can of soup on a toaster, but understand neither will address my hunger. I hunger to know what moves people to put a human face on transcendence, then die or kill to defend it. A hunger that verges on instinct. I hunger to be comforted by something greater than my hunger. In a world that defies imagination, I hunger for the reassurance of a fairy tale. I leave the crew mess. Standing at the rail on the bow, I scan what is ahead. The engines slow almost to a stop. We might be preparing for the pilot to come aboard, as we must before we can dock, but his boat is nowhere in sight. I wait, close my eyes. When I open them again, I am standing at the water's edge, holding a line. It appears I have caught and released a fish. The goldfish that pokes out of the water has Wolfgang Pauli's face, complete with a square jaw tending to jowl. He tells me that he will grant one wish and asks me what I want. I reply that I would like to pull up from the depths the answer to my most profound question, which I have not yet framed even for myself. The Pauli fish frowns and declares he will do even better and instruct me on how to constellate a quantum net to capture the theory of everything. I take mental notes, follow his directions precisely in drawing the plan. When I get home, I find a pad and pencil, then draw what I remember, the directive voice clear in my mind. I'm disappointed with the result. What I see on the paper looks like a newt. I return to the shore. The Pauli fish appears again. I described him what happened when I followed his instruction. I ended up with a newt, not a net. He repeats my words, a newt, not a net, shakes his head. I protest again that I adhere exactly to his direction. You're not even wrong, he repeats his well-known response to cowering students, then laughs. Newton's net is not what it used to be. I'm talking about gravity, highly overrated in the scheme of things. Even a nitwit knows a newt is not a net. It's not supposed to work this way, I tell him. This interchange between us is supposed to be richer, magical, a way of riddling existence. He is somber, this Pauli fish. He nods. If there is something I want from him, I must say it and stop demanding he both ask and answer my questions. Fair enough, I agree. Again, that smirk. Okay, I tell him. I want a concrete image to reveal what I know so deeply it remains invisible to me. Be specific, he insists. I need a pilot to guide me to the harbor I can't see from the ship in my mind, and to see the ship from the beach where I now stand talking to you. That's 2 wishes, he yawns. I want to know the world again as I once did, in full color, I blurt, when I could be in 2 different places at the same time. Pauli fish nods as best he can, considering he has no neck. He repeats the advice he gave Niels Bohr when his solar model of the atom went belly up. Systems and concepts have to settle, he assured me. I will perhaps be able to visualize again what is necessary for me. This is not good enough, I protest. What about my quantum net? Pauli fish tells me, it's too late to discuss this today. I might come back tomorrow, or better, in a week. Meanwhile, I should remember his words. What are those, I ask? As if it mattered. Keep your line in the water. Last poem. Ulysses in Decline. So we traveled. My oarsman's ears stuffed with beeswax against the siren's deadly song. So only I could hear it, and every time I cried out, they tied me as ordered more securely to the mast. They heard only their own heartbeat, but I heard things which can't be repeated to anyone before or after the time required to make the passage, being all and only the smallest part of this narrative. The smallest part of this narrative took 9 years from beginning to end. What do I make of this in the autumn of my years, when the leaves turn crisp as hair on a head otherwise bare? It is different from the tale I told back then. I was not one of them, and can't really know what they saw or felt. None who manned the oars, ears stuffed with beeswax, survived to tell me. Thank you.
shuffling here, I'll ask Dan if he would mind coming up and setting up as he wishes. I'll try and get out of the way here. Before you go, I want to just say a couple words, and that is thank you so much. Thank you to Paul, thank you to Dan, you're going to enjoy very much in just a moment. Thank you to each of our wonderful poets and musicians. And I think I might say maybe just 2 quick sentences after Dan's gone, okay? But we don't want to rush him because it's going to be good. Thank you so much, and we'll just transition here in just a moment. Do you want this on the stand?
It's a pleasure and an honor to be with all of these folks today, all these poets, musicians. The less I talk, the more I can sing. I am on a journey, already out the door. Don't know where I'm going, but I'm ready to explore. There will be disappointment and answers I don't know. Yes, there will be trouble, but still I will grow. With an open heart and an open mind, I will seek, I will find. With an open heart and an open mind, I will seek and I will find. I will sweat and labor and do what it takes. I will help my neighbor and learn from my mistakes. With an open heart and an open mind, I will seek, I will find. With an open heart and an open mind, I will seek and I will find. I am not a pilgrim searching for a sacred place. Each step along the journey can be filled with love and grace. With an open heart and an open mind, I will seek, I will find. With an open heart and an open mind, I will seek and I will find. Thought I had all the answers when I was in my youth. Now all I want are good questions that will lead me toward the truth. With an open heart and an open mind, I will seek, I will find. With an open heart and an open mind, I will seek and I will find. I will seek and I will find. I will seek and I will find. How about a metaphor? I saw a wind power site, and I had the phrase "power from above" in my head for a week. And at the end of the week, I realized, well, you know, all that fossil fuel is power from below, and I had to do something with that metaphor. Hence this song, this Enviro gospel song. Sinners, are you ready for a little redemption? To receive forgiveness for what we've done? The time has come to break bad habits. It's time to turn to the wind and sun. Just a little more power from above, a little more faith, respect, and love for this old earth, our only home. It may take strength to say no to that power from below. There's salvation in the power from above. There's a better way than barrels of oil. There's a better way than lumps of coal. If we use our heads and work together, renewable power, that's our goal. Just a little more power from above, a little more faith, respect, and love for this old earth, our only home. It may take strength to say no to that power from below. There's salvation in the power from above. What will we do for a better world? Get on our knees to hope and pray. Well, that's not enough unless we change. The judgment day is every day. Wars have been fought over who owns what. Lives have been lost and fortunes won. But you and I will someday win, 'cause no one owns the wind or sun. Just a little more power from above, a little more faith, respect, and love for this old earth, our only home. It may take strength to say no to that power from below. There's salvation in the power from above. Yes, there's salvation in the power from above. I'll leave you with this one. And we started off the afternoon with a poem where there was participation from around the room, so I hope you'll try this very easy chorus, which is no more walls, no more walls. We'll build bridges between our differences. No more walls. There's trouble in the family, it's tearing things apart. There's trouble in the neighborhood, and it breaks my heart. No more walls, no more walls. We'll build bridges between our differences. No more walls. There is trouble, and it's spreading like twilight turns to night. The only way out of darkness is to do what's right. No more walls, no more walls. We'll build bridges between our differences. No more walls. There is trouble on this planet, one home we all share. 7 billion sisters and brothers need the same water and air. No more walls, no more walls. We'll build bridges between our differences. No more walls. When there's trouble in this world and it's got us by the throat, there can be strength in numbers, in voices, and in votes. No more walls, no more walls. We'll build bridges between our differences. No more walls, no more walls, no more walls. We'll build bridges between our differences. No more walls. Thanks to Kathy for organizing this. We will be here.
think that this happened, it's happening all around the world. That's the cool part too. I'd like to thank Lee Gooden, Lucy Prosco, Carol Grazer, whose Cafe Lena open mics on the first Wednesday of every month are wonderful. Pat Leonard, Nancy White, who runs the Writers Project, the next of which is October 11th at 12:30, is that right? Cool. Micah Scoville on guitar, Stuart Bartow, Neil Herr on guitar, Paul Pines, and Dan Berggren. I'd also like to thank SUNY Adirondack, the Faculty Student Association, Chartwells for food out there, the Writers Project, Doug Bruce and Danielle Brown, who did our media. And just to remind you, what do you do when you leave here? Besides buy a book or a CD. Look around the walls. All these art pieces were done by the faculty here. Look into the eyes of somebody you haven't met yet. Think about the critical mass we need to establish on this planet for anything to really change. And I think maybe today, in a little tiny way, it may have started. Thank you so much, and no more walls.